In the heart of Europe, a significant shift is quietly unfolding, one that could reshape the leadership of one of the Church's most symbolic dioceses. The Archdiocese of Vienna now stands at a crossroads. With the retirement of Cardinal Christoph Schönborn, his position remains vacant, and speculation has begun to circulate about who might soon take his place. As is customary in such transitions, the diocese is currently overseen by an appointed administrator, a temporary guardian of spiritual and administrative duties until a permanent successor is named. But what makes this moment particularly sensitive is the name that has emerged, an alleged frontrunner whose possible appointment has stirred deep concern among observers. Reports from Austria suggest that a bishop with a controversial background is being considered. While still unofficial, this potential nomination has already triggered debate, not just because of the figure in question, but because of what it could signal about the broader direction of church leadership under the new pontificate. It's important to recall that prior to becoming Pope Leo XIV, the current Holy Father served as prefect for the dicastery for bishops. In that role, he was responsible for reviewing candidates for episcopal roles worldwide, evaluating, vetting, and recommending priests for elevated service within the Church. His experience and familiarity with key figures mean that any upcoming appointments will likely reflect a conscious decision rather than oversight. As such, all eyes now turn to Vienna, where the next decision may carry consequences well beyond the borders of Austria. In his former role at the Vatican, the current pontiff was directly responsible for assessing candidates for key leadership positions, both bishops and those eligible to ascend to higher roles, including archbishops. Among the many names reviewed during his tenure was Cardinal Robert McElroy, whose path to promotion sparked interest and discussion. While the specific details of the Pope's past recommendations remain undisclosed, his familiarity with the global episcopate is undisputed. Now, attention is once again focused on the Archdiocese of Vienna, where reports suggest that Bishop Hermann Glettler is under consideration to fill the vacancy. The decision, however, has not yet been finalized. According to recent updates, the announcement of Cardinal Schönborn's successor has been delayed, a delay that may reflect either internal debate or broader strategic consideration. A number of independent Catholic commentators and platforms have taken notice. One such outlet, which has closely monitored developments in Vienna, reports that Bishop Glettler's name has emerged as a leading candidate. Their analysis of this potential appointment has drawn widespread attention, given the bishop's previous actions and public positions. It's worth noting that any discussion about controversial leadership decisions, especially within a global religious institution, must be approached with care and clarity. Platforms hosting this type of content operate under community guidelines, and as such, any commentary must adhere to standards of respectful discourse and factual reporting. As these developments unfold, many observers are now watching closely, awaiting the official decision from the Vatican. It remains possible to explore sensitive topics, especially within the context of faith and church leadership, so long as it is done with care, respect, and a sense of responsibility. In this particular case, discretion is advised. Some of the issues raised by observers involve subjects that may be unsettling to certain viewers due to their connection with sacred spaces and religious symbols. One figure who has drawn considerable attention is Bishop Hermann Glettler, whose artistic decisions and liturgical choices over the years have sparked repeated debate within Catholic circles. His tenure in Austria has included the installation of various forms of contemporary art within church settings, works that, to some, represent bold expressions, and to others, troubling departures from traditional reverence. These actions have been documented by several independent Catholic commentators, especially during periods like Lent, when themes of spiritual reflection take on particular importance. Concerns have been raised over whether certain installations have crossed the boundary between artistic interpretation and disrespect for sacred imagery. The core of the concern lies not merely in aesthetics, but in the symbolic weight of what is displayed within spaces of worship. For many, churches are places where beauty is meant to elevate the soul toward the divine, not provoke confusion or controversy. As discussions continue about potential appointments and the direction of the Church's visual and theological identity, such choices remain deeply relevant not only for Vienna, but for the broader global community of faith. As the conversation surrounding the future leadership of Vienna continues, it's important to recognize that these developments are not yet finalized. The current discussions remain in flux, and no official appointment has been made. For those following this process closely, it is a reminder that the Church's internal decisions often unfold over extended periods, influenced by numerous factors and consultations. Recent reports have suggested that Bishop Hermann Glettler is being considered for promotion, an indication that has prompted widespread reactions, particularly among those concerned about the preservation of traditional liturgical and artistic norms within sacred spaces. The concern is not just about one individual, but about what such an appointment might signify regarding the broader direction of the Church under new leadership. Since assuming the papacy, Pope Leo XIV has gradually begun making episcopal appointments across various regions, signaling the beginning of a new chapter in global church governance. However, the Archdiocese of Vienna remains one of the most prominent vacancies yet to be filled. Cardinal Christoph Schönborn officially stepped down as Archbishop in mid-January, and while the expectation had been for a successor to be named promptly, recent updates indicate that the decision may not be made until later in the summer. According to the Austrian press agency AP, local church officials do not anticipate an announcement within the next few weeks. For the faithful, this moment of waiting presents an opportunity for reflection, prayer, and attentiveness. As with any significant transition, the eventual appointment will carry not only administrative weight, but also symbolic resonance for the region and beyond. Currently, the Archdiocese of Vienna remains under the temporary care of an apostolic administrator, appointed by the Vatican. Bishop Josef Grunwald was entrusted with overseeing the day-to-day spiritual and administrative responsibilities while the search for a new archbishop continues. Initially, it was believed that the appointment of a successor would take place within a matter of weeks. However, several unexpected developments, including the recent passing of Pope Francis, have contributed to delays in the decision-making process. Among the names reportedly under consideration is Bishop Hermann Glettler, whose potential elevation has sparked both interest and concern in various church circles. Still, as is often the case with episcopal appointments, the final decision may differ from early expectations. The process remains confidential, and outcomes are frequently shaped by deeper discernments taking place behind closed doors. The Archdiocese of Vienna holds a unique and influential role in the life of the Catholic Church, not only within Austria but also across the broader European context. Its historical significance and cultural visibility make any decision regarding its leadership especially noteworthy. Over the years, the diocese has witnessed a wide range of liturgical expressions and theological perspectives, which have occasionally led to internal tensions. Cardinal Christoph Schönborn, the former archbishop, navigated these complexities with moments of both openness and restraint, often attempting to strike a balance between tradition and contemporary engagement. As the Church continues to reflect on its future and its leadership, the appointment in Vienna will undoubtedly serve as a signal one that may shape not only local pastoral life, but also broader perceptions of ecclesial identity in the years ahead. The Archdiocese of Vienna has long held a position of prominence within the Catholic Church. Historically, the Bishop of Vienna has often been elevated to the rank of cardinal, though such elevation is not automatic. Nonetheless, the position carries significant visibility and influence, especially in matters of church leadership and direction in Europe. One event from recent years underscores the symbolic weight of this archdiocese. On December 2, 2019, an article from a European news outlet highlighted a public controversy surrounding a concert held inside the iconic Vienna Cathedral. The event, characterized by some commentators as theologically provocative, drew sharp responses from various figures within the Church. Among them was Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano, who issued a statement condemning the concert, describing it as an example of modern liturgical and cultural expressions that he believed diverged from traditional Catholic teaching. The event had been organized and endorsed by Cardinal Christoph Schönborn, then Archbishop of Vienna, and drew criticism for its artistic direction and message. In response, a public rosary was organized outside the cathedral by Alexander T. Shugul, a lay Catholic known for his involvement in traditionalist movements. The public prayer gathering served as a symbolic act of protest and spiritual intercession, reflecting concerns among certain groups regarding the direction of sacred art and worship within high-profile church venues. This moment in Vienna's recent history continues to be referenced in ongoing conversations about the future of the archdiocese, especially as a new appointment nears. The broader question remains: what kind of leadership will guide Vienna in the years ahead, and what vision of the church will it embody? While the recent events in Vienna have sparked renewed discussion, the underlying concerns are not new. The dynamics surrounding sacred art, liturgical style, and public response in the archdiocese stretch back many years, forming a pattern that some observers consider deeply rooted. One notable example dates to December 18, 2009, when the British publication The Independent reported on an artist whose work generated significant controversy among Catholic communities. The article focused on Alfred H.R. de Licker, an Austrian artist known for his provocative interpretations of religious themes, including a depiction of the Last Supper that many viewed as disrespectful to sacred tradition. What made this incident particularly significant was its location: Vienna. According to multiple sources, the artist's works had been displayed in church contexts as early as 24, setting off public reactions and raising questions about the boundaries of artistic freedom within liturgical spaces. Unlike commentary from niche religious outlets, this report came from a mainstream European newspaper, underscoring the reach and resonance of the debate far beyond internal church circles. It also highlighted how the intersection of faith, culture, and art can become a flashpoint, especially in cities with both historic religious prominence and vibrant cultural scenes. These earlier controversies continue to inform current concerns about the direction of the archdiocese and the type of leadership that may be appointed in the near future. In previous years, certain artistic installations in Vienna's cathedral prompted intervention by church authorities. One such instance involved artwork that drew criticism for its unconventional portrayal of sacred themes. Eventually, church leadership, including then Archbishop Cardinal Christoph Schönborn, stepped in to address concerns raised by the faithful. These controversies have led many observers to describe Vienna as a place where the boundaries of tradition and innovation in religious expression are regularly tested. This context has contributed to heightened scrutiny over the potential appointment of new leadership in the archdiocese. One name frequently appearing in commentary is Bishop Hermann Glettler. Various independent Catholic platforms have documented aspects of his ministry, including decisions related to liturgical spaces and visual expression. Some of the artworks placed under his guidance have generated public reactions due to their symbolic content and style. Bishop Glettler also recently collaborated with a religious leader from another faith tradition to co-author a book centered on the theme of hope and interreligious dialogue. The project was presented as a call for unity in a time of social and environmental uncertainty. While some praised its message of cooperation, others questioned its theological implications and the broader vision it might represent within Catholic settings. In several of his cathedral installations, contemporary art was prominently featured, sparking debate over whether certain pieces honored or undermined the sacred atmosphere traditionally associated with Catholic worship. As these conversations continue, many are reflecting on the broader question of how sacred spaces should engage with modern culture, especially in dioceses as historically significant as Vienna. When considering any potential church leader, their theological focus and public messaging become central to understanding the vision they bring. In the case of Bishop Hermann Glettler, his recent homilies and public addresses have placed strong emphasis on issues related to humanitarian and environmental challenges. In a 2023 sermon delivered during the rededication of a monastery in Ried im Obrental, Bishop Glettler highlighted what he referred to as the pressing realities of the modern world, specifically climate change and the global refugee crisis. Rather than downplaying these matters, he called for a collective spirit of solidarity, urging action that is thoughtful, not reactionary. According to the bishop, neither denial nor exaggerated alarmism offer meaningful paths forward. Instead, he advocated for a balanced, morally grounded response to what he described as tangible signs of global distress. He pointed to severe weather events during the summer months as examples of broader environmental shifts that demand reflection. Bishop Glettler's message echoed the themes presented by Pope Francis in his 2015 encyclical Laudato Si, which called for the care of what the pontiff described as our common home. In alignment with that teaching, Glettler stressed that environmental stewardship should not be seen as peripheral to the faith, but as a core expression of human responsibility worthy of deep prayer, consideration, and ethical action. While this approach has been embraced by many who see it as a necessary moral witness in the face of global challenges, others within the Church have expressed concern that an emphasis on social and environmental issues may come at the expense of addressing internal spiritual and doctrinal concerns. As the Church weighs future leadership decisions, especially in key dioceses, the balance between pastoral outreach, doctrinal clarity, and public advocacy remains a matter of careful reflection. In his recent addresses, Bishop Herman Glettler has continued to place strong emphasis on environmental responsibility. According to his own words, caring for creation should stand as a central priority, describing it as one of the most important spiritual reflections of our time. This framing echoes themes from Laudato Si, the 2015 encyclical by Pope Francis, which calls for renewed global commitment to the environment. For Bishop Glettler, the preservation and restoration of the natural world is not merely a practical concern, but a deeply spiritual one. He has encouraged the faithful to see ecological stewardship as a form of moral engagement, one that deserves thoughtful reflection, concrete action, and heartfelt prayer. His emphasis on these topics has been seen by many as a sign of his pastoral direction, particularly relevant as discussions continue about the next Archbishop of Vienna. However, his leadership has not been without controversy. Critics have raised questions about how certain artistic and liturgical choices align with traditional Catholic teaching. A specific concern involves funding and installation of contemporary art in sacred spaces works that some have argued challenge long-held devotional norms. One such instance reportedly involved the installation of a cloth artwork during Lent in Innsbruck, which included an image described by some outlets as symbolic yet deeply provocative. According to reports, this installation depicted a pig's heart enclosed in transparent material and was publicly presented within the cathedral. The stated intent was to offer a modern interpretation of the Sacred Heart, a central devotion in Catholic spirituality. The cost of producing and displaying this series of artworks across multiple churches was estimated to be around €15,000. While some regarded it as an attempt to engage modern audiences through bold symbolism, others saw it as an unnecessary departure from the reverence traditionally associated with sacred imagery. These decisions continue to raise questions about the intersection of art, theology, and public witness within the Church, especially when such works appear in spaces designed for worship, prayer, and spiritual contemplation. As Church leadership transitions continue, these moments become part of a larger conversation. How should the Church navigate cultural expression while remaining anchored in its core spiritual mission? As the discussions surrounding potential leadership in Vienna continue, some attention has turned to broader cultural shifts within Church spaces across Europe. One notable case frequently cited in commentary involves the former Church of St. Agnes in Berlin. Originally part of a Catholic parish, St. Agnes was released for external use in 2024 due to financial constraints. A significant decline in local parishioner attendance made it difficult to maintain and renovate the historic structure. As a result, key furnishings such as the altar and pews were carefully relocated to other churches, including St. Boniface. The building, with its distinct post-war architectural style, eventually came under the interest of contemporary art organizations. Preservation experts expressed concern over the state of the property, noting that its condition placed it at risk. In response, the church ensemble was added to a list of buildings requiring special attention to ensure their structural integrity and historical value. In the years that followed, St. Agnes was transformed into a venue for modern exhibitions. While some applauded the adaptive reuse of the space for cultural expression, others raised questions about the type of art being displayed and whether certain depictions, particularly those involving religious imagery, were appropriate for a former house of worship. This situation reflects a wider conversation across parts of Europe, where formerly sacred spaces are being repurposed in the wake of changing demographics and economic realities. The balance between artistic freedom, historical preservation, and religious heritage continues to challenge communities and leaders alike. These evolving uses of church properties add yet another layer of complexity to ongoing questions about leadership, identity, and the spiritual direction of major Catholic dioceses in the modern era. In 2005, the Berlin State Monument Council included St. Agnes Church along with several other religious buildings on a list of proposed cultural monuments. The goal was to recognize their historical significance and encourage preservation efforts. Between 2005 and 2011, the site was temporarily used by a local Christian congregation led by preacher Vulgard Spitzer, following the Catholic Church's formal withdrawal from the property. During that time, new proposals were introduced by the local district council to explore ways of repurposing the structure. The intention was to renovate and reintegrate the building into the city's evolving urban and cultural landscape. Eventually, gallery owner Johann Koenig, already active in Berlin's art scene, learned of the property and expressed interest. In 2012, Koenig secured a long-term lease on the church building, committing to a 99-year agreement. Since then, the former place of worship has operated as an art space, now known as the Koenig Gallery. Where sacred liturgical functions once took place, the venue now hosts contemporary art exhibitions and cultural events throughout the year. The gallery's programming has sparked discussion due to the nature of certain installations. Pieces displayed in the space have included reinterpretations of religious symbols and imagery, some of which have been described as controversial or provocative. One widely discussed artwork depicted a crucified figure in an unconventional pose, with the face turned toward the cross and the body rendered in a stylized, abstract form. Another piece reportedly presented a variation on the traditional ex homo theme, with the figure depicted as gazing upon a frog affixed to a crucifix. While some view such works as efforts to engage with theology through modern symbolism, others have questioned whether the content is appropriate for a building that once functioned as a sacred space. These examples highlight ongoing tensions between cultural reinterpretation and religious reverence, especially in places where art now occupies spaces that were once dedicated to worship. As the Church considers the future of its presence and leadership in Europe, these cultural intersections continue to shape the wider conversation. Among the artworks displayed in European churches over recent years, one particular piece received attention for its unconventional depiction of Christ. This artwork, originally shown in Berlin, was reportedly brought to Innsbruck by Bishop Hermann Glettler, who saw value in its symbolic presentation. The piece has since been discussed as part of a broader trend within certain church communities that seek to incorporate contemporary art into sacred spaces. Some observers have described this movement as part of a larger shift, what has been called an ecclesiastical modernism, which attempts to bridge religious tradition with modern cultural forms. Supporters argue that this approach encourages dialogue and accessibility, while critics voice concerns about the erosion of sacred aesthetics and theological clarity. Bishop Glettler's approach to interfaith engagement has also drawn attention. In a recent publication, he co-authored a book alongside a religious leader from another tradition. The book, titled Don't Choose Hate, Choose Love, promotes a message of peace, tolerance, and mutual understanding in a world marked by division. Presented as a call for unity across belief systems, the book encourages readers to take practical steps toward fostering a culture of empathy and cooperation. One chapter focuses on countering societal polarization through dialogue, proposing that compassion and shared humanity form a foundation for peaceful coexistence. For some, this project represents a positive step toward building bridges in a pluralistic world. Others within the Church, however, raise questions about how such initiatives should be framed theologically, particularly when they seem to shift emphasis away from traditional teachings about salvation and doctrinal clarity. As the conversation around future episcopal leadership continues, especially in regions with complex cultural histories like Vienna, these actions and publications become part of a larger reflection on how the Church expresses its mission in the contemporary world. In their collaborative work, Bishop Hermann Glettler of Innsbruck and his co-author, representing a different religious tradition, present a vision of unity centered on compassion and mutual respect. Their book proposes that even in a fractured society, signs of hope can be rediscovered through dialogue and shared humanity. Framed as a response to what they describe as a growing harshness in public discourse, the work encourages openness and solidarity. The publication emphasizes friendship across ideological and religious divides, aiming to inspire a more humane and understanding approach to others. While this message has found support among those advocating for peace and reconciliation, it has also sparked critical reflection within the Catholic community. Some theologians and lay observers have voiced concern that in the effort to build bridges, clarity of doctrine and the distinctiveness of Catholic faith may be unintentionally diluted. They argue that genuine human flourishing, as understood within Catholic tradition, is ultimately rooted in fidelity to Christ through evangelization, sacramental life, and striving toward holiness. As Bishop Glettler's name continues to circulate in discussions about the future leadership of Vienna, his published works and public actions are receiving close scrutiny. These reflections are not limited to one particular issue, but form part of a broader evaluation of how contemporary church leaders engage with art, culture, and theology. In related discussions, concerns have also been raised about the use of certain modern art installations within sacred spaces. According to reports from various Catholic commentators, objections from theologians regarding these installations have, at times, been met with strong dismissals labeling them as out of touch or overly rigid. The tension lies in differing visions of what belongs in a cathedral. Traditional stained glass, statuary, and sacred icons, or experimental artistic expressions that seek to reinterpret spiritual themes in unconventional ways. This conversation continues to shape perceptions of what leadership in the Church should look like today, particularly in places as symbolically important as the Archdiocese of Vienna. In ongoing discussions about sacred art and its role within the Church, Bishop Hermann Glettler has shared his views on the purpose and nature of artistic expression in religious spaces. According to statements attributed to him, true artistic merit is not measured by shock value alone, but by its ability to convey depth, vitality, and spiritual relevance. He has emphasized that while art may at times provoke reflection, provocation should not be its sole purpose. Instead, meaningful art, especially in a sacred setting, should inspire the mind and elevate the soul. In his view, dismissing a work merely because it does not align with personal aesthetic preferences risks overlooking the deeper intent behind it. Such perspectives have generated both praise and critique. Supporters appreciate his openness to modern forms of expression, seeing it as a way to engage contemporary audiences. Others, however, caution that placing overly experimental pieces within churches may blur the boundaries between artistic innovation and reverence for the sacred. In one report featured on a Catholic blog, an artwork described as highly controversial was praised by Bishop Glettler for its capacity to challenge the viewer. The piece was presented as a response to what was described as a desensitized approach to modern liturgy, suggesting that bold artistic gestures might reignite a deeper emotional or spiritual engagement. These conversations reflect a broader debate about the role of beauty, symbolism, and form in Catholic worship spaces. Traditionally, sacred art has served as a visual catechism drawing the faithful toward contemplation, mystery, and divine truth. As such, any shift in aesthetic direction often brings with it broader theological and pastoral implications. As the Church continues to consider its future leadership, particularly in regions like Innsbruck and Vienna, questions about the integration of culture and tradition remain central to the conversation. Among the various debates surrounding sacred art in modern Catholic spaces, one voice that has stood out is that of Bishop Hermann Glettler of Innsbruck. In multiple interviews, he has advocated for a balanced and thoughtful approach to contemporary art within the Church, emphasizing that while artistic works may challenge perceptions, their purpose should be rooted in meaning, not mere provocation. Responding to concerns raised about some of the installations displayed during his tenure, Bishop Glettler acknowledged that art in sacred contexts should not aim to provoke for its own sake. Instead, he emphasized the importance of spiritual resonance, suggesting that true art, whether ancient or modern, should help draw people out of distraction and invite deeper contemplation. In an interview with a German media outlet, Bishop Glettler called for openness to both traditional and contemporary artistic expressions, while stressing the need to uphold the dignity and sacredness of worship spaces. He proposed that welcoming artistic dialogue, when done responsibly, could enrich the Church's broader mission, including its ability to communicate the gospel to future generations. He also spoke about the importance of re-engaging with the cultural realities of the present age, noting that the Church's efforts to evangelize must often involve a translation process that bridges tradition with modern experience. In this view, sacred art becomes not just decoration, but a form of communication capable of stirring reflection and dialogue. When addressing concerns about potentially offensive or unfamiliar imagery, Bishop Glettler encouraged believers to pause before reacting with rejection. He noted that the cross of Christ itself is a deeply challenging symbol, representing the triumph of love over hatred and violence. For him, explaining the true meaning of the cross and why it continues to inspire reverence is essential to helping people engage with both faith and culture in a meaningful way. His approach remains part of a broader discussion within the Church: how to remain faithful to sacred tradition while responding creatively and respectfully to the world as it changes. The discussion surrounding sacred art and its boundaries continues to raise complex questions within the Church, particularly in relation to installations displayed under the leadership of certain bishops. Bishop Hermann Glettler of Innsbruck has become a central figure in this conversation due to a number of artistic choices that have drawn both public praise and criticism. Among the most discussed was an art piece created by Austrian artist Christian Eisenberger, which depicted a stylized crucifixion in an unconventional manner. Reports state that this piece was displayed in a cathedral under Bishop Glettler's oversight and received widespread attention due to its symbolism and visual presentation. The artist, known for pushing the limits of public performance and visual art, later created a dramatic interpretation tied to themes of resurrection. These performances, while intended to evoke reflection, were met with concern by some members of the faithful who questioned their appropriateness in a sacred setting. Additional commentary from various independent Catholic platforms has highlighted other instances of unconventional art within the diocese, including reports of a timepiece fashioned from a corpus of Christ presented upside down, as well as the use of a transparent chasuble, an outer liturgical vestment worn by the bishop during an artistic event. These artistic expressions were part of broader exhibitions aiming to engage the Church in cultural dialogue, though their impact remains a subject of ongoing debate. Commentators have pointed to a recurring theme: the tension between embracing modern artistic forms and preserving the reverence traditionally associated with Catholic liturgical spaces. This debate reflects wider concerns about how sacred art should serve the faithful, whether as a means of connecting people to divine mysteries or as a platform for provocative reinterpretation. The Church has long maintained that art within liturgy should uplift, instruct, and inspire. As leadership transitions take place and discussions continue about the future direction of major dioceses, the use of sacred space and the role of visual culture remain essential components of this ongoing conversation. In 2019, discussions around sacred art and its role in modern Catholic spaces once again intensified after reports emerged concerning an artwork installed during Lent in Innsbruck. The piece in question, known as the Lenten cloth, featured imagery that many found highly controversial, including a symbolic representation that involved a pig's heart encased in transparent material. This installation, presented as a contemporary interpretation of the Sacred Heart, drew sharp criticism from some members of the Catholic community. The display sparked concern not only for its content, but also for its placement within a historic religious setting. While some viewed it as a bold engagement with modern art, others felt that it crossed a boundary by appearing to disregard the deep reverence traditionally associated with such devotions. Critics noted that, despite the public reaction, there was little response from the broader hierarchy at the time. No official statements were issued from episcopal authorities in Austria, Germany, or the Vatican addressing the display, which led to further discussion about the Church's relationship with cultural expression in sacred contexts. At the center of current debates is the possibility that Bishop Hermann Glettler, under whose guidance the installation occurred, could be appointed to lead the Archdiocese of Vienna. While his previous appointment occurred prior to Pope Leo XIV's election, any future elevation would fall under the new pontiff's responsibility. As such, the decision has drawn renewed scrutiny from commentators and lay Catholics alike. Those following these developments have pointed to a broader concern not just with one individual, but with the trajectory of certain appointments and liturgical directions. In some corners of the Catholic world, faithful are being encouraged to pray for wisdom and discernment, as the Holy Father continues making leadership decisions during this formative period of his papacy. Recent staffing choices within the Vatican have also drawn attention. Some commentators have raised theological concerns about the structure of authority within certain departments, particularly when it involves roles typically reserved for clergy being assumed by religious sisters. While these changes reflect ongoing conversations about collaboration in the Church, they remain a topic of active dialogue within the global Catholic community. Throughout this unfolding situation, one message has been repeated across many platforms: prayer. Many voices are calling for the faithful to include Pope Leo XIV in their intentions, asking that he be guided in truth and wisdom as he navigates the complex landscape of global Church leadership. As the conversation continues, it reflects deeper questions about how the Church balances tradition with contemporary engagement, art with reverence, and leadership with spiritual integrity. These are questions that remain open not only in Vienna, but throughout the universal Church. In the Catholic tradition, the line between personal shortcomings and public accountability is carefully maintained. While every person struggles with individual faults confessed privately and addressed within the sacramental life, matters that occur in the public sphere, especially within the leadership of the Church, call for transparency and discernment. When questions arise regarding a potential appointment, such as the one involving Bishop Hermann Glettler, it becomes part of a wider dialogue about the direction of the Church, the integrity of its symbols, and the responsibilities of those entrusted with pastoral care. The call to pray for wisdom in these decisions has grown louder in many corners of the Catholic community. There is also growing reflection on the current landscape of Church leadership, especially concerning the appointment of individuals to influential dioceses like Vienna. Concerns are not solely focused on liturgical practice or aesthetic preferences, but on what these decisions reveal about the Church's self-understanding and mission in today's world. This conversation naturally touches on deeper theological themes. Ecclesiology, the theology of the Church's identity and purpose, guides how she sees her role in the world, how she structures authority, and how she proclaims the gospel. Some commentators argue that the post-Vatican Roman II understanding of ecclesiology marks a departure from earlier traditions, noting that while the language may sound familiar, the meanings have often shifted. These shifts can be seen in the way Church leaders respond to modern cultural developments, including the integration of contemporary art into worship spaces or evolving interpretations of Church authority. For those concerned about such trends, the request remains simple yet profound: to return to clarity, reverence, and fidelity to the Church's spiritual mission. Among the voices in the Catholic media landscape, several have continued to offer regular commentary and theological reflection. Independent blogs and publications have contributed to this ongoing discernment, offering thoughtful critiques and reminders of the importance of maintaining liturgical beauty and doctrinal soundness. At the heart of the matter is not a campaign of personal criticism, but a desire to ensure that the sacred remains sacred and that those entrusted with leadership are guided by faithfulness to Christ and His Church. The faithful are being encouraged not only to remain aware of these developments, but to respond in the most powerful way possible, through prayer. Many are now asking for continued prayers for Pope Leo XIV, that he may be strengthened and guided as he makes pivotal decisions in the early stages of his pontificate. These choices, particularly regarding appointments, have the power to shape the Church's witness for years to come. As the Church faces both challenges and opportunities, what remains essential is a spirit of hope rooted in truth, clarity, and charity. Through faithful discernment and prayer, the Church can continue her mission proclaiming the gospel in every age, with reverence for the past and vision for the future.